So this question was asked to me just yesterday, well today, but yesterday on yesterday's Good Morning Walk, and I have talked about this before. That I have a big belief that there's going to be a big progressive bloc in this parliament, and this big progressive bloc, if it plays its cards right, if it plays well, if it thinks strategically, thinks how it is going to sort of achieve stuff and sort of work together because it is now in power. And there is a big difference, as we'll get into a moment, between protest and being in power, because when you are in power, you get to craft policy, which is the big thing we'll be talking about in a moment. But before we get to this, my hope that this is not a guerrilla war that a lot of these people on the Labour left are sort of going to be, starting in, certainly in the parliamentary party, in this, because you do not want to blow, guys, you do not want to blow your political capital so quickly. So quickly. It's such a bad idea. But before we go talking about that, I just really briefly want to go over quickly what happened a couple of years ago in America over something called Force the Vote. And oh my, Force the Vote was really dumb. But there were a lot of people in America on the left who really wanted them to force this vote on healthcare. Now, what would have happened? Well, what would have happened was these, progressives would have stopped the appointment of Nancy Pelosi until she agreed to put a vote for healthcare on the floor in the Senate. Now, first of all, AOC and the rest of those sort of progressives that got into that point, everything that they've achieved so far in committees, etc., forget about it. They would have been pushed in the political wilderness. They wouldn't have achieved a single thing that they've done throughout the years that they've done. It would have been pointless for them to do it because they'd have been pushed out to the wilderness. Second of all, let's say, like, Pelosi relented. Okay, you get your vote. It loses because of Joe Manchin. Or if it does somehow manage to pass in the Senate, doesn't pass in the House, and thus you end up making it harder in the future to pass any kind of proper healthcare reform or implement, universal healthcare in America. That was the situation, for the left. And there were lots of people like Sam Cedar saying to them, you cannot do this. It is a dumb idea. You do not understand, any of the political strategies or what's going on. It is far better to, not do this because it's a bad, dumb idea. Now, bear in mind, the situation is different. The situation is different. Obviously, what is being offered here is, or at least what we're hearing, is an amendment being pushed by these people into the King's Speech to get the two-child benefit cap removed. Now, I want to stress, I am in favor of the two-child benefit cap being removed. I think it would be good to be removed. We know it's potentially has some very good policy outcomes. We know that this would help a lot of people in poverty right now. It would help lift a lot of those kids either out of poverty completely or, bring their standard of living up quite significantly. So we know this would be a good thing to do. But, and this is the but, if we do this, if this is implemented, this suddenly means Labour might have to start borrowing more money. If we have to start borrowing more money, this then means inflation could go up. So your best intentions to help raise these kids out of poverty may not go the way you are thinking. And bear in mind, I'm understanding that this is a big if. I do understand that this is a big if, but it could very well happen. What do you do if you do this? Labour borrow more money, inflation goes up. So this extra £3,000 a year that they're meant to be getting doesn't then feel like £3,000. Maybe feels, depending on inflation, Maybe it feels like 2,000, even though they're getting 3,000, but it feels to them more like 2,000. Is it still going to be good for them? Yes, of course, but because of inflation, it's hurting them. And then, what about other people who are also feeling, the cost of living crisis, where inflation goes up on them as well? So, what you have here is protest. And I am firmly believing right now that this is a protest, that we want the two child benefit cap gone. Okay, I understand. I'd like to go and see it gone as well. So you might be saying, okay, what should I do, Clever? What would you do, Clever Clogs? Well, I'll tell you what the Labour left and the Progressive Bloc and the people who want this gone should be doing. The first thing they should be doing is saying, hey, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, etc. This is our objective. This is the policy. We know it's going to have some good policy outcomes, but we are also very aware you don't want to borrow to increase potentially, inflation. We know that could have a bad outcome on a whole other different people, all suffering the cost of living crisis. So here's what we're going to do. Before we pass the two-child benefit cap, before we get rid of it, what we'd like to see is maybe a tax put on in dividends, an increase in dividends tax. This then helps pay for the two-child benefit cap. That once that's done, you've got an increase in tax revenue from the dividends tax. Then you can then lift the two-child benefit cap. I would much rather this idea and that be, or at least an idea of policy. How can you craft this? How can you do this? And also, I think they should also be making very, very well aware of a plan. What if inflation goes up? What if they do this and inflation does go up? How then should they deal with that? They have to acknowledge that might happen. And I will acknowledge myself, it is an if, but it is not. It could happen. And then inflation goes up, it makes the cost of living crisis a worse for a lot of other people. So I would much rather see, rather than pushing an amendment into the King's speech, I would much rather see a policy document written and given to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves saying, we want to see the two-child benefit cap removed. We know you want to see it removed as well. You know yourself, it would be a good political win. It would have lots of really good outcomes. But we know, of course, you might have to borrow more for it. We know, of course, you're worried about what if inflation goes up and, something like that happens. So here's what we intend to do. First of all, do dividend tax, etc., whatever. This is how we intend to, pay for it. And then also, just in case, how do you deal with inflation? Like, seriously, we should have they should be putting forward this is how we sort of fight inflation if this does happen. So rather than this guerrilla war to put forward an amendment which may very well lose, I would rather see a policy document put forward saying, we want to see the two-child benefit cap removed. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to end up paying for it. This is what we're going to do just in case inflation goes up as well. And this is how we also intend to tackle inflation. I would rather see that. I would rather see that document delivered to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and negotiations entered into. Because that's another thing. When you're in power, you should be using the fact that you are in power to talk to them, to have discussions with them, not done in an antagonistic way, especially within your own party. You need to have more constructive debates and conversations, and have that policy document ready to go to, say, this is what we want to achieve, this is how we're going to do it. If these concerns come up, then this is what we're going to do. I think that would be a lot better to put towards, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves than essentially to go and engage in some sort of guerrilla warfare that potentially you are going to lose if that amendment is that we're hearing gets put into the King's Speech. If it gets defeated, then you could find suddenly you have no more political capital to spend. I mean, let me know what you think. And bear in mind, if you think I'm wrong on this or anything like that, you all know I have a very much an open door policy. If you want to come on and talk about this, discuss this with me, I am more than happy to have these, discussions and things like that. But like I say, let me know. But I think this is what they should be doing sort of right now. Having an actual policy document to say this is how we intend to, you know, lift the two-child benefit cap with a plan of how it goes. Not just saying remove the two-child benefit cap, because that is then more of a form of protest. Whereas if you come with a policy document, it's more of a plan as to how you can achieve that. I think that is a lot more feasible than ultimately what is just going to be an amendment to something which may not win. So, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, do remember to click the like and share button. And of course, as always, I'll see you all next time.